Morning, learners. Morning. It's Interdedicodes once again. Welcome. Today's lesson is going to be about the market failure. So let's go on and check and observe our examination guideline in terms of the market failure. Let's check here, learners. Very important 7.1. Very important 7.1 that we need to acknowledge our essay in terms of the examination guideline. What is an essay that we should expect in market failure? This is an essay, the causes, but be careful that our examination guideline or examiners, when they ask, they won't say causes, and some of our resources are saying reasons for market failure. I know that, learners, some of our resources are saying causes, but the examination guideline in a question paper, it will appear as misallocation of resources. So be careful, learners, that when it arrives or when it appears in an essay in our examination, when it says discuss in details how the following factors leads to misallocation of resources, they are still referring to the causes as per our resources and also referring to the reasons. Very important, learners. And 7.2, again, we need to be very careful of it, is the consequences of market failure as essay as it is illustrated here in our examination guideline, that we need to state or discuss in details the state intervention as a consequences of market failure with relevant or with the aid of relevant graphs. Very important. And also be mindful that this might be appearing as only discuss the state intervention as a consequence of the market failure. Then the examiner might not want you to include the graphs, but when it's with the graphs, it means you have to discuss in details with the relevant graphs. We'll look at those graphs, which is the minimum wage, minimum price, and also maximum price, and how tax and subsidy are distributed among that in order to eradicate the cause of the market failure as a consequence. Then let's move on, learners, to what is actually a market failure. That is very important. Remember, every lesson or every topic, we need to acknowledge the concepts related to the topic, that what is that topic is all about. Then this slide is a definition or a description of what is a market failure. We say that a market failure is when a free market fails. Remember, here we are talking the market failure. We are not actually talking a public sector failure, but here we are talking the market as a whole. It says that it is when the market fails to produce the quantity of goods and services that people want at a price that reflects marginal utility, which is the value to the consumer or of the product that's available. Meaning that we are actually trying to say, if the demand is not equals to the supply, the market is actually failing, because the producers, when they produce, they need to allocate resources in such a way that it reflects the marginal utility. The consumer's demand should be catered. Then we say that the market is actually failing. Or when the optimal production outcome has not been achieved, then we say the market is failing. Or when the markets are unable to achieve the best resource allocation, then we can say now the market is failing. Very important, let us to know the concept. What is a market failure? Let's not confuse this concept with the public sector failure, because here we are talking the market as a whole. Remember, in a previous lesson, we did imperfect market or imperfect competition, where that we say when they are imperfect, it means they are not perfect. The competition is there, is not there. Some they are actually price takers. Then it leads to the market to fail. Then let's look at this essay. I'm not going to dwell much on this essay, learners, because our lesson for today is very long in terms of the graphs that we actually need to master and prepare ourselves for the examinations that are coming. Then this essay that I've set is in your resource. It might be the causes or it might be the reasons of the market failure. But remember, as I've alluded, that in terms of the examination guideline, it's misallocation of resources. That is our first possible essay in this topic of the market failure. Then the first cause or a reason is the externality, which is also a spillover effect or the third party effect. So it's very important to also know what is an externality. Externality are when production or consumption of a good has a negative or a positive effect on the third party. Meaning that in a production or in a consumption, there might be a cost to the third party, or there might be a benefit. Both in what? In production and also in consumption. You might consume something, and that something might cost a third party to incur the cost. Hence, we say it's a cost or a benefit. Or you might consume something, and that something might benefit someone when you consume it. Hence, we say that it will have either a positive or a negative. Also in production, you might produce something, and that something might cost something to a third party, which is the next person that was actually not a part of a transaction. Then again, in consumption, you can consume something, then that something might benefit a third party. Hence, we call it an externality, which can be positive or a negative. Hence, we say the people not directly into the what? Into transaction. Remember, a transaction in accounting, we say that it is when there are two parties that are willing to sell and other party is willing to buy. So the next party, which is not directly in a transaction, might benefit from that or might be incur the cost. Then let's look at the first externality, which is the negative, meaning that negative we associate with what? With the cost, because it doesn't bring something good, somebody must incur the cost. It says goods with negative externality result in social cost. You see the cost in it. Now, that it results in social cost, meaning that this part of externality, which is negative, might affect the society negatively. Examples are there when maybe there is a construction of a certain company is constructing or producing, then the pollution or either kinds of pollution that might come there, the air, the water pollution that might come when that particular business is producing. If though that pollution that comes out of that production harms their community or a society, we call it what? We call it a negative externality, which the society is going to incur what? The social cost. Then social costs are considered to be the private costs plus external cost. When you talk of the social cost, we need to consider what? The private cost, what privately is costing you to produce that particular product, and what will be the external cost to the society during the production of that particular commodity. Then the next bullet, individuals often consider only the cost themselves they bear or incur, private cost, when making a decision, not, very important, not the cost that may be incurred by others or external cost. Meaning that any business, when they produce, remember the profit, the business's motive is a profit motive. Now, when they produce, they only interested in checking what will be the cost of my production and what is it that I'm going to benefit from the production. The businesses, they don't care about the social cost or the external cost that might incur during that production. Remember, when you produce, pollution comes, it harms the society. You are not going to worry or take care of the cost that incurred by the society. You are only interested on what is going to cost me privately so, and also what is going to cost you external. So it's very important for that one to be careful of it. And let's move on. The negative externality continues here. E.g. of the negative externality that creates a social cost. Socially, it involves the building and running of the airport can be split into. When there is a building of an airport or running of an airport, this social cost can be split into the following, which is the private cost. Remember what I've said? When you are producing, you worry about the private cost. Private cost of the airport, cost of construction, cost of paying workers to run an airport, and etc. That is what the business are going to worry about. Then let's look at the external costs now. The external cost of the airport is the noise, meaning this one, it costs who? The society. The noise that is there in an airport is the cost that now will be incurred by the society. Look what I've just said. Air pollution will cost the society as well. To those living nearby, risk of accident to those living nearby, loss of landscape. Do you see that? These are the examples of what? These are the examples of the social external costs that might incur by the society due to what? The airport. But the person that is building the airport is only going to be interested on the cost of construction, cost of paying his workers or her workers, and running the airport, aiming to maximize profit. But he's not going to worry about that airport is there. What happens to the pollution of the airplanes when they flew up? What happens to the risk accident to the society of people that are living nearby? Also the landscape when they have to make a construction of that airport. So that is how we talk of external. What society is costing externally due to the production of the airport, right? Then we have the positive. Remember, we said negative we are associated with the cost. Then the positive we associate with what? The benefit. Is that externality whereby during that production of the airport, look what is happening. People are getting employed. It means society, they benefit from that particular airport. More especially the people that are living nearby, they might get employment. That is a benefit of that society that is living near the airport. Hence, we talk that it's externality that is positive. Let's look at how it is. Goods with positive externality result in social benefit. You see the benefit now. We are no longer talking the cost. Remember, in the negative externality, we talk of the social cost, but here, because of it's a positive externality, then we talk of the social benefit. What is it that society is benefiting from that production of the airport? Now, social benefit is the total benefit to the society from producing or consuming a good or a service. Remember what I said when we started with the externality, we said you might produce, then society benefits something from the production. You might consume, and the third party might benefit something from your consumption. Then let's move on, learners. Right? Here is positive externality still continues. Then we say social benefit include all private benefit plus any external benefit from what? Either production or consumption. You see that, ne? Now, it means in a social cost, we look at how privately the benefit is and what is external benefit. Externally, what is the society benefiting from that? Now, let's look at it. If a good has significant external benefit, then the social benefit will be greater than the private benefit. So meaning that if the good is important or is of importance, the external benefit, then the social benefit will be greater than the private benefit. Let's look at an example of that. E.g., cycling to work. If people are cycling to work, the private benefit include what? They become healthy, they benefit from being fit for cycling. That is benefit number one when people are cycling as positive externality. And let's look at it. And also avoiding conjunctions, which is a traffic conjunction, because you are able to move around when you are cycling. Then lower cost of cycling, because petrol price is increasing over time now. If you are cycling, you don't need petrol. You just cycle with your motor, with your bicycle. Then what happens now? You are also becoming fit and it's lowering cost, and you are able to travel faster because you are not going to follow the routes that are more vehicles are following. Rather than the driving, external benefit of cycling may be also include what? Lower conjunctions for other road users. You see that? And lowers what? Pollution, because emissions, remember, emissions comes when more motors are moving. So when you are driving, when you are cycling with your own bicycle, there won't be any emissions. So there will be lower pollution levels that might incur. So that is the benefit of what? That is an example of positive externality. Now let's look at this one. Market failure. Market fails because it fails to produce more goods and services with a positive externality. Meaning that in a market, we need the market to produce more of things that are creating a positive externality, not things that are creating a negative externality. Why? The reason being is that the negative externality, it becomes a cost that must be incurred by the society or by the government. Then let's look at the examples of that. Meaning that we are encouraging so that when the market not to fail, it must produce more of the things that are having positive externality, like education and health services. Because these are the, remember, there is a concept that we say, these are the what? The merit goods, things that we desire to have as the society. And the government is encouraging this consumption of education and healthcare services. You know that in terms of demerit goods, we'll say the government is discouraging the use of it. We'll go on with that in a later stage. Let's move on, learners. Then number 2, missing markets. It causes the market to fail. From the word missing, meaning that an example that I normally do is that there might be a demand for a certain product. Normally, I usually make an example with people that are living in Excelsior. Excelsior, there is no KFC. But people in Excelsior, they are craving to demand KFC. So if KFC is not there in supply, but there is a demand of KFC, that means what? The market is failing because there is a missing market where there is a what? There is a demand for that particular product. So they have to travel from Excelsior to Tabanju in order to get KFC. It means the market is missing, but there is a demand for that particular product. Right, let's look at it. A significant market failure is the failure to produce some goods and services despite being needed or wanted. Remember, when the market is not failing, we have to see demand being equals to supply, not the one exceeding the other. So we'll say the market is failing. Then number 2, the most extreme case of missing market is the case of what? Pure public goods. Remember, in public sector, we have dealt with this pure public goods, which are some of them they are non-excludable, some of them they are non-revivable. We'll come to that. Then we have to look at it. Pure public goods are clearly provide a benefit to the consumers, but they are unlikely to be provided in a market economy. We benefit from them, these pure public goods, as community, but they are unlikely to be supplied, meaning they are actually at what? They are actually under supplied. And these are the goods that we actually need as a society. They are actually under supplied. And that is the one that we need as a society because we benefit from that. So be careful of that. Then example of that. Examples of pure public goods include national defense, the police, services, and street lights. This is the one that we benefit from them. We need them, but they are actually unlikely to be produced or supplied. Hence, we say they are under supplied. All right, let's move on. Learners. Missing market still continues due to the fact that the markets for these goods are not likely to form. They are called what? Missing markets. Because we want police services. We want all the examples that we alluded in a previous slide. But when they are likely to be produced or supplied, then we say the market is actually missing. Hence, the market missing market is a what? Is a cause of market failure. And they are considered to be special case where demand exists, but there is no what? Supply is absent. We need roads. We need provisioning of public goods and services like roads or infrastructure. But when it's not there, but there's a demand for that, then we say what? These markets are missing. Then the market is failing. Right? Then let's move to pure public goods. The market is likely to fail to supply pure public goods given the impossibility of charging consumers at a point of consumption. That's where the problem is. That the market is unlikely to supply, or it fails to supply those pure public goods because of what? Remember, most of these public goods, they are actually provided by what? By the public sector, which is the government. So they are likely to be supplied or produced because the government doesn't know how much it actually have to charge for consumers when they have consumed their pure public goods. Public goods have the following characteristics. I've just said it. Non-excludable. Remember public sector topic? What is non-excludable? Very important. When a public good is supplied, it is impossible to exclude other individuals from deriving a benefit. Meaning that you can't exclude someone from using a street light. When a street light is installed there, or an Apollo light, it's very impossible for you to exclude someone from using it or benefiting from it. So very important to look at non-excludable. We cannot exclude someone, hence it says non-excludable here. Right? Let's go on. It still continues missing markets. For example, let's look at the missing market. Like I've said, example, once a street light is made available in an area, all passers can benefit and no one can deny an access to it. It means you move on you move on through the street light, someone that is coming again, then public goods, then as I've just said, they have two characteristics. And the first characteristic is what? Non-excludable. That means that we cannot actually exclude someone or a person from consuming or deriving a benefit of that kind of a good, which is what? A street light. As I made an example that when for individuals do not need to queue. Are we still there? Or I just skipped the right. This one. For example, once street light is made available in an area, meaning all people who are passing by, they will get the benefit. And it means if you have passed before the next person, you cannot exclude that person from using the street light. Hence it says no one can be denied an access to it. Then the next characteristics of pure public goods is non-revival. What is non-revival? Remember, we talk of it in the public sector. That even if you have passed through the street light, you cannot actually, your consumption when you pass, it does not get reduced for the next person that comes after you. Even if, like an example of using a road or a robot, when the robot is green for me to pass, the next person that comes after me will also have to pass. It won't be a fact that because of I passed before, the next person that comes after me will be, the consumption of the robot will be reduced. No, it won't be reduced. Everyone will be able to pass. Hence it says it is non-revival. When a pure public goods such as street light is consumed by one individual, the stock available for the others is not decreased. Hence it says, example, a pedestrian passing under a street light has no effect on the supply of lighting whatsoever. Hence I'm saying, you pass through the robot, the next person that comes after you will also able to consume. It's actually, it doesn't reduce the benefit from the next person. Why? Because the stock of public good does not diminish or decrease with the use, meaning that the consumer do not need to compete with each other to get access to it. We cannot compete to say, today I'm going to be the first one to pass the robot. Then the others that comes after me won't able to benefit. All of us, we are going to benefit from that. I think it's clear. Then let's go to the next one. It's the last about, we are now in the example of the non-revival. For example, individuals do not need to queue for that access. We have said that one. These characteristics discourage potential suppliers because it will be impossible to charge users at the point of use. How do we charge a person when he's consuming a street light? It becomes impossible for the government to charge a person for the use of the street light, because we cannot actually calculate how many people have passed, who has passed more than the other, so that we can calculate. That's why we say it's a market failure there. Then we have number 3, misallocation or the causes of the market failure, which is imperfect competition. Remember, we talked of imperfect competition in a previous lesson. So it means, remember, imperfect competition, it says the competition is not perfect, like monopolies and other imperfect market structures that we have talked about. Market fails because imperfect market fails to achieve both what? Technical and allocative efficiency. Remember, in the previous lesson, we talked of those inefficiencies of the market failure. E.g., monopolist is considered to be inefficient because it produces less and charges higher price. So that is one of the market failure, because we are demanding to buy. Remember, Eskom, as an example of monopolist, they supply the entire industry. Now, if they are charging us higher price, but they are producing less, the market is actually failing, because we are born to buy electricity in respective of what? Because of there is no other competitor in terms of that. Then the second bullet, in the market economies, competition is often impaired by the power. Power of what? Power of the monopolies. And the power often lies to the greater extent with the producers than consumers. Remember, we cannot actually control the price in monopoly. They are the price takers. They will control the price and also control the supply. Hence, we say the market is failing because of what? The competition in monopoly is not fair. It's unfair. Still, imperfect market continues here. Most businesses operate under conditions of imperfect competition. Remember, thing, oligopoly, monopoly, and monopolistic competition. Allow them to restrict output. You see that one? Remember when we talk of collusion, where they will collude and restrict output or fixed price, e.g. monopoly, duopoly, oligopoly. So these are the imperfect markets. So if they are not perfect, they become a what? A cause for the market to fail. They raise the price and charge prices that are exceeding its marginal cost. It means they are actually charging us highly excessive price. And if it's like that, the market will actually fail. They can also prevent new businesses from entering. Remember, monopoly, we are talking of license is the one that prevents others to enter, and also patent rights. They are the ones that prevents others to enter. Hence, we experience what? Imperfect competition because of the licensing that forms a barrier, or higher startup costs that forms a barrier for others to enter. It becomes a problem that now we'll experience imperfect market, and we want the perfect markets. Then it could cause the market to fail. Imperfect market fails to achieve both technical and productive efficiency. We have alluded to that. The modern market does not always allow price negotiation. Remember, imperfect market, the price is determined by the market forces of demand and supply. But in imperfect market, as we have alluded in the previous lesson, the price is not determined by the market forces. Hence, you see, some of the market structures under imperfect, they are the price takers. Then being a price taker, it means you are able to control the price and also controlling the supply. Then that will actually makes the market to fail. Advertising is often employed to promote producers' market power. Then that is actually the third cause or a reason for market failure. Let's move on to the fourth. Lack of information, very important. And we need to acknowledge that in terms of the lack of information, we need to consider lack of information regarding to the producer and also lack of information regarding the consumers. And that can cause the market to fail as well. If we are producers, we lack information. We are consumers, also lacking information. That will cause the market to fail. Because if you are a producer that doesn't know that question of grade 10, how to produce, what to produce, and how and for whom to produce, it means you will end up producing things that are not needed or demanded in the market. In that way, it means there might be over under supply of a product that is not needed. It means the market is failing. Remember, we said for the market failure not to exist, we need to see demand and supply being actually equal. Not prices increasing, not supply being over the demand or demand being over the supply. Because we know that when the demand is over the supply, inflation comes. If the supply is less than the demand, the price are high. So we need to be careful in balancing the two. Hence we say, if producer doesn't have the information or an accurate information or a misleading information, he or she will produce what is not needed. Very important. Then in terms of the consumers, we need to have information on the consumption. When we consume, when we buy goods and services, we need to have clear information. Hence, in the perfect market, we say that consumers have the perfect knowledge what is happening in the market. Has a perfect knowledge of what the prevailing price that is charged on the market. Because if you don't have a perfect knowledge of what is actually charged in the market, you will end up buying something at a price that is higher. Then the market will fail because you will be spending more unnecessarily due to what? Lacking of the information. Very important. Technical and allocative efficiency requires that both the producers and ourselves have to have a what? Complete and accurate information about the cost. It's very important. Disadvantages and benefit, we need to know. And of the goods and services produced and also of the goods and services that we are consuming. That is what I've said there in terms of producer and consumers. It's very important to have accurate information. Hence, some of the products that we are consuming, they have direction for use. So it's very important that before we consume, let's read what is actually written as direction for use. The example tablets, they will be saying drink 1. Right, Lenas, I will try to lower the pace in terms of explanations, but I'm very worried about time because this lesson is very long. I'm saying, Lenas, in terms of the information, we need to have the information as producers of what is it, how are we going to produce, and what are we producing, and for whom are we actually producing, to avoid oversupplying or undersupplying that particular good. And also as consumers, we also need to have a complete and accurate information about the cost and benefit of a good and services produced and consumed in the market. In that way, the market won't fail because we'll have what? Clear information, not a lack of information or adequate information. So very important, learners. Producers and consumers make production and consumption decisions based on the information they have. How? It's an information. What? You have the information. For whom? You have the, meaning that you have the information in terms of the target market. For whom are you actually producing? Then in that way, the market won't fail. You will be supplying what is actually needed in the market, not supplying what is not needed or supplying more than what is needed. Remember, we don't actually have to experience surplus or a shortage. You'll know the impact will go on when we get to state intervention. Then the last one, learners, the information is incomplete or inaccurate leads to what? Wrong decision making. If the information is incomplete, it's inaccurate, you will make a wrong decision as the consumer, also as the producer, that what is it that you needed to produce? What is it that you needed to buy in order for you to get a satisfaction as a consumer or an utility? Very important. Hence it says about what to produce, how to produce, and for whom you must produce. And that will lead to wastage of resources. Then that is what? If we are having a wastage of resources, we are becoming what? productive, inefficient, or being allocative, inefficient, because we did not produce according to the desired quantity that is demanded by the producers. Very important. So we need to have information so that we can make informed decisions when we are purchasing as consumers, or when we are producing as producers. We need to make informed decisions. Let's go on, learners. Lack of information also continues here to say producers might not know all the different technologies and production techniques, which is the method, and that are available, and different resources that can be best used to produce goods and services more efficiently. When you don't have what? Information. You might not know that there is this particular technology that will make you produce goods and services faster at a cheaper production cost, so that you can produce more and be efficient in your production. If you lack what? Information. But if you have the information, you will know the different technologies that are there in production, and the techniques, which is the method that you can use in order for you to be efficient or best on what you are producing. Is very important. Right. Consumers as well. Remember what I've said? Lack of information, it applies for both consumers and producers. We need to have information, but if we lack information, it will cause the market to fail. Consumers might not know the price of the product is lower from other suppliers. You will end up buying a product with an expensive price because of what? You have lacked information. You did not research information so that you can make an informed decision and achieve utility or satisfaction. The last one, consumers might not know about harmful. You remember what I've said? Direction for use. You will say, take 1 tablet 3 times a day. But if you did not, you have lacked information in order to read instructions, you might not know the harmful effect of the product, since they might be just based their decision to consume on the information that is misleading suppliers. So very important, this one, 8-mark question of a higher order. Remember, either 2.4, 3.5, not 3.4, 3.5, 4.5, to say, what is that the government can do to ensure there is availability of information to consumers? Very important to know that. How are government intervening to ensure that there is accurate information that is supplied to the consumers, for them not to end up consuming things that have harmful effect or things that are misleading from the supply. So it's very important that we need to give that for every producer, the goods should be tested by South African Bureau of Standard for it to be, in order to test that whatever that is being produced is not harmful for human being consumption. Hence, we have SABS, which is South African Bureau of Standard. Most goods, they must be tested there. Hence, let's go on. I don't want to make the examples that are ambiguous. Then let's go on, number 5. Imperfect distribution of income and wealth. If the income and wealth is not perfectly distributed, it will actually cause the market to fail. In which way? It means if it's not perfect, it is imperfect. Meaning that there is an unequal distribution of income and wealth between population. So it means when goods are produced, they will only be able to be bought or consumed by a certain group of individuals that are having what? More income or have acquired more wealth. What about others? So that is one of the things that makes the market to fail. If the income is actually not distributed perfectly amongst the population. There is an unequal distribution of income and wealth because Market is only interested. Remember, the aim of the business is to maximize profits. That's what they want. They are not interested that I'm producing BMW. Who's gonna buy it? They are not interested. The one that has money to buy, they will buy. So they are not interested on the income levels or the wealth that is acquired by different population. They are only interested on what? Producing. Hence it says the market is only interested in distribution of goods and services for those who can afford to pay. If you cannot afford to buy BMW, the market doesn't care. They are only producing for those that can able to afford. And now it becomes unfair if things are produced, but only a certain group of people are the ones that can able to afford. What about others? Then the market is failing. Other reasons for unequal distribution of income is the following: discrimination. In the workplace, in order for other people to acquire more income or more wealth, there is a discrimination in terms of development in the businesses, in terms of positions and stuff that actually channel the income levels and wealth to a certain individuals. Then it means certain group of population will be the one that will always have more money to consume goods and services. Difference in market power is actually one of the reasons that makes imperfect distribution of income. Unequal access to market educational opportunities. Remember, educational level, some of us, we did not study further based on their circumstances, but it makes our income to be actually unevenly distributed due to the qualification or educational opportunities that we get, and in terms of the income that we receive and the wealth that we acquired. Then it will make impossible for others to consume goods and services. Hence, is one of the reasons why the market is failed, when the income and wealth is unfairly or unequally distributed amongst the population. Then let's move on. I think this is the last one, which is immobility of factors of production. If factors of production, remember the word immobility, it means they cannot what? They cannot move. If we need a mine here in Bloemfontein and there are workers qualified to work in the mines, but we can't actually move the mines from Welkom to Bloemfontein, it means now the market is actually failing because there is a supply of labor of that particular mine, but we lack what? The supply of the mine. It becomes a market failure. Resources may be not very mobile at the best of time, and therefore the markets are not able to adjust rapidly to the change in demand and supply. An example that I can also make in terms of the labor, remember factors of production is labor, land, capital, and entrepreneurship. I can talk of labor as well, that if there is a certain school that needs 25 teachers now on Monday, and the criteria will say we want teachers from that particular area, not from outside. It will become impossible to get the supply of labor of that kind at that particular time. Because for you to become a teacher, you need to undergo a training of 3 to 4 years. So that will be one of the causes that makes a market to fail, because we need labor. The demand for labor is now, but there is no supply of labor. Meaning that, let's go on, learners. Remember, I'm talking factors of production. All 4 factors of production, if they are impossible to move, they make the market to fail, because there might be a demand for it, but the supply is not there. Then we can say the market is failing. Geographic immobility of labor. People are usually here where they are, where they have relatives, where they have their friends, where they know the town very well or the area very well, and they are the members of the various clubs and other social groups. So they are often unwilling to move far from work. You know that getting used to the area you become comfortable, but moving to the one place to another, it becomes uncomfortable, that you have to start to find new friends. You need to be familiar of the town or the area, and you must be able to find the various members of the club and social grouping of people and all that. So that is one of the factors that impact negatively on the market to fail, because people are not easily to adjust in the new environment. Institutional immobility of labor, pension schemes may tire people into a particular company. That I cannot move from one company to another because of what? I have accumulated more pension in this company. If a worker moves, he or she will probably lose the amount paid by the employer on their behalf. So that is one of the things that makes it impossible for people to relocate. Then it still contains foreign trained doctors may not be allowed to work in another country unless they spend several years retraining. So that movement, if it's not possible, it makes the market to fail. Hence, you remember in few years, our Free State Department did send off some of our inhabitants of our country to Cuba in order to study medicine. The reason being, we wanted to have such skills of labor in our system of our country. But before that, we had to do what? We had to import doctors from Cuba. So that importing of such skill of labor from one country to another, it means that the market was failing. That's why we had actually imported, because we had a need for that particular labor, but we did not have it internally into our country or domestically into our country. We had to import it. That's why the market was actually failing. Then the other cause, married or very close couples may not be able to take better paid jobs offered elsewhere. Because of what? Because it will render the other partner unemployed, so the total family income will fall, and if they move. So that's one of the measures that makes labor not to move, to say, I'm married, I'm comfortable where I'm staying. Now, if I move, I'm the only one that is actually promoted from one area to another. What about my spouse? My spouse has to quit the job and follow me with the family and move somewhere. What happens to the total income of the family will decline. So that is the market is actually failing there. Let's move on. Then we have two concepts there, which is inefficiencies. Very important. Very, very important. Remember, table is not allowed. Not allowed. I'm just presenting it for you to understand the concept inefficiency. But when this comes as an 8-mark question for you to differentiate, you are not allowed to do the table. Remember, I have alluded that in previous lessons. Right. We have the productive inefficiency and allocative inefficiency. Very important. Allocative and productive inefficiency. Let's look at what is productive. Remember, we are actually distinguishing between the two concepts. Productive inefficiency or technical inefficiency, it is when firms do not produce goods at the best possible cost, which is there at what? At the lowest point of the average cost. But let's look at what is allocative inefficiency. It is when firms do not distribute production resources correctly. Here we are talking distribution of resources or allocation of resources. Here we are talking production. That's how it differs. Here we are talking production, meaning that if the business is efficient, not inefficient, it's when they are producing at the best, lowest cost. Here, when you talk of business being allocative, efficient, not inefficient, it means it is when the business is able to distribute its resources optimally or correct. But if they doesn't, they are becoming allocative inefficient. If they doesn't produce at the lowest cost possible, they are becoming productive inefficient. Then the second bullet, this means the firms can still reduce costs without reducing the quantity of a product, but firm fails to do so. Here, the product mix does not match the taste of consumers. This means the producer or the product produced are not what the consumer wants. Bullet 3 is also when the firm produces too few products that required by the consumer, meaning that the firm does not maximize output from their production resource. They are producing fewer when the demand is high but the supply is low. Then the next bullet, the quantity required by consumers are not available, e.g., the products are available at too fewer quantities, meaning at fewer number than what is demanded by the consumers. Allocative inefficiency can still be existing even when market has achieved productive efficiency. You will see that in the next slide when we are doing a production possibility curve, that allocative inefficiency can still be existing even when the market is achieving productive. Let's move on. Remember, it's my question there, differentiate or distinguish between the two concepts. Then the next slide, it will be us as being able, must be able to draw the production possibility curve and also explaining it. Remember, this is grade 10 work. We did this one in grade 10, the PPC. You remember this, the point on the curve, point outside, point inside. Let's look at it now. Remember, point on, we actually saying they are being productive, efficient. Point outside is non-attainable. They cannot produce to this point F. Point inside, which is point E, it means their production is happening, but there is a wastage of resources there. Let's look at that last bullet that I said. Productive inefficiency can also not be achieved while they are achieving allocative efficiency. The market is productively efficient when it produces combination of goods along the PPC. The combination of A and B and what? And C and D, meaning within the curve. It means there we are talking productive inefficiency. But you will see when we come to allocative. These are quantities which are achievable when all resources are used productively without a wastage. At point A, B, C, and point D. But look at that. The area with the PPC, e.g., point E, which is the point inside, represent productive inefficiency. Why? Production is happening, but there is a what? Waste of resources, because fewer goods than what is possibly produced. Then let's look at bullet 3. Point E. We are still at point inside. A point E, while the available resources, workers, capital, and raw material, which are the factors of production, can allow the market to produce combination of 150 clothes and then 950 foods. The market produces only 150 clothes and 300 food. This represents waste of resources. Remember what I've said. Point inside indicated what? Production is happening, but there is a waste. Because they are producing maybe 300, maybe or 350 there. Then look at what is happening there. They are only able to produce 950 or 900. Right? This means that the market produces the quantity that is lower than its potential. There is a lot of wastage of raw materials, time, labor, and other resources, etc. Then waste of resources is in the result of the cost of production being higher than it should be. Now, I want us to go look at point B and point C to say they can produce within this line, but being inefficient. How? Remember, the resources are scarce. We have a scarcity of resources. Now, we are producing, remember a production possibility curve, it says It's a combination of two products that can be produced using same set of resources, meaning we are producing clothes and food. Now, let's look at point C, what is happening. We can able to produce 300 clothes and 900 food. So, if we can say the demand for clothes is not 300, it's 400, or it's 350. The demand is not 300, it's 350. But the resources that we have can only produce 300 of clothes and 900 of food. It means the market is actually, there is a productive, there is allocated inefficiency because the demand is 350, but the market can only produce 300. So what about the 50 that is demanded? They are not going to produce because remember, resources are scarce. They can only produce at this point. So it means they have to sacrifice the resources by producing 850 to cater that 50. From 300, they have to reduce the resources of producing food to produce 850 in order to increase the supply of clothes to 350. And what if the demand for production of food is still 900? It means 50 will not have a product. So that's why we say they might produce within the line, but also being allocative inefficient. Right? You see what I mean there? Eh? Then the area outside the PPC, which is point F, remember we said this one is an achievable level of production because the economy does not have enough resources. It's point outside. There, our resources allows us to produce only up until this production possibility frontier or borderline. Right, let's move on. We are now at externality graphs. Very important. As in when we can observe our examination guideline, it's very clear about this graphs of positive and negative externality. Here it is that we need to have to know to describe with the aid of well-labeled graphs, positive and negative externality graphs. Very important. 8 mark can come there to say, with a well-labeled graph, draw and explain positive and negative externality. That's very important. Now, this one will be a negative one. This one will be a positive externality one. Remember, we have dealt with the concept positive and negative. When it's a negative, we experience a what? A cost. When it's positive, we experience what? A benefit. Remember, we have benefit in production, benefit in consumption, cost in consumption, and cost in production. Let's look at what is happening here. Remember, we are talking negative externality. And remember, the negative externality also associated with the social, with the external cost and social cost. Now, look at what is happening here. The supply decrease from S to S1 and price increase from P to P1. Then this area of the shift from S to S1, which is this area shaded here from S to S1, we call it an external cost. Why external cost? Because remember, a negative externality, it's all about the cost that is incurred by the society in production. Remember the example that we did, the production of an airport. There might be a pollution. There might be a landscape loss on the environment. There might be a pollution that harms the community. Then, the reason why you see the supply decrease is because of government intervention in terms of levying taxes on production, on consumption of production of goods that causes a negative externality. Meaning that The reason for the supply to decrease from S to S1 is the government charging producers that are producing goods that are causing negative externality, so that the supply of those goods can decrease and price increase. Because if that doesn't happen, the government is incurring what? The external cost. Because whatever that has been happening in a production of an airport, the external cost or the cost that is incurred by the society, as an example of pollution that comes out of the construction of an airport, who's going to bear the cost? Is the government. So the government is imposing taxes on producers that are producing things that are causing negative externality. Reason being, government will have revenue that it can able to finance the cost that are going to incur by the society. Because that pollution, when it comes, as individual society, we are going to go where? To the hospital and get free medical service. Who's actually providing that? Is the government. So the government is taxing businesses in order to recover what? External costs. Costs that have incurred in the production by producers. That's why you see the supply of that is shifting from S to S1. Remember, shifting from the right to the left shows a decrease. Shifting from the left to the right shows an increase. And when you look at that, the law is there. Supply decreasing from S to S1, then price increasing from P to P1. That is how we talk of negative externality. Then we have the positive externality. Remember this one, we are benefiting. That airport that is there constructing, we are getting what there? People living nearby the airport will get employed. So it is a benefit to the society of that particular area when they are situated near the airport. When the airport is done, people who are working, that are living near the area will get employment, which becomes a what? An external benefit to the society. They are actually helping the government in creating of employment. That particular airport is a benefit to the society. Hence, you see, now the government will say, look at what is happening there. In this graph, what is different here? There was a tax that was imposed to the producers that are producing things that are causing negative externality, so that we can decrease the supply of things that are causing negative externality. But here, because of this is the benefit, the government will say, let's subsidize. Let's subsidize those businesses that are creating positive externality. That creates a what? A benefit to the society. Government will give a subsidy. Remember, what is a subsidy? It's a financial support by government, or it's a what? It's a financial grant that assists producers in order to lower the cost of production. They don't actually bear all the cost when subsidy is there as a financial grant or assistance. Then what will happen? The demand for those goods that are actually having a positive external, that has a benefit to the society, the demand for it will increase. Hence, we talk of what? Education as an example of things that are giving positive externality, and as well as what? Healthcare. You remember that one. We also talk about the healthcare services. Then this one, the government is actually encouraging people or society to demand more of goods that are having a positive externality, things that are benefiting the society. Hence, you see that the subsidy will ensure that the producers are producing larger quantity of goods and services that are creating positive externality, which is the benefit to the society. Then the demand for that will increase. Then the government will benefit. Then the people will benefit externally, or the government will benefit. Hence, you see the demand shifting from D to D1, which is from the left to the right, shows an increase. Then the price of that will increase from P to P1, which is the law of demand. Right, let's move on. Right, now, we have the second essay. As per examination guideline, this is our second essay under the market failure. We've dealt with the previous essay, which is the reasons or causes, but bear in mind, per examination guideline, it is the misallocation of resources. Then here, the second essay is the state intervention as a consequence of the market failure. Possible essay. Right. The first intervention by government is a direct control. Now, the government wants to intervene directly to control this market failure. The government can pass laws or use existing legislative framework to control businesses that generate negative externality. We don't want businesses that will produce and create negative externality, because the negative externality becomes a what? A cost. So we want businesses that will produce so that we see what? The benefit as the society or as the government. So government will pass those laws or use the existing ones to control that. Remember, what are the other interventions to control negative externality? Taxes. They will tax them because they are producing more and they are polluting the environment. Let the government use their passes laws to say, if you are producing more of things that are causing negative externality, you'll be taxed more. Then the production of things that are causing negative externality will decrease. Then we have a positive externality. The government can grant a subsidy, meaning the subsidy it actually the subsidy is actually encouraging. It's actually encouraging. It will encourage production of what? Of positive externality goods. Why? Because this one, they have benefit. Meaning government, that is a direct control of the intervention by government. They will intervene to say, the ones that are creating positive, let's give them subsidy so that they can continue to produce more and more of such goods, because we are getting what? The benefit from them. But the ones that are causing negative externality, let's impose tax on them so that we reduce the production of that. In a free market, there is a under consumption of goods with positive externality because people usually ignore external benefit their decision make. So normally we experience the under consumption of positive externality. So government has to intervene to encourage consumption of positive because it has the benefit to the society, but discourage the consumption of negative because they are actually a cost to the society. You will see when we are about to do merit and demerit goods. Then let's move on. We are still going on with the direct control in terms of negative externality. What is it the government intervene to do? To achieve more social effective outcome. Government could try what? The tax on negative externality. You remember I talked about the tax. Why? This means that consumers pay full social cost. That's why you see things like cigarette, they increase over time. They are taxed more over time. And beverages. The reason being what? The government wants people who are consuming that to pay the price of cigarette plus the what? The cost. So that it is able to recover external cost of such goods that might harm the next party, or that will be a spillover effect to the next party that was not directly part of the transaction. You remember when we were talking about what is negative externality. Then this reduces consumption, creates more socially efficient outcome. When the tax is imposed, it means it will discourage actually. It will discourage people from consuming more of goods that are causing negative externality. Then the social efficiency outcome will be achieved when there is a reduction of consumption of things that are causing negative externality. Then let's move on. Number 2, imperfect markets. It becomes a what? a problem. Now, government has to intervene. What is it that the government intervenes to deal with the imperfects where there is no competition in order to ensure that there is a competition? Because competition, it actually allows us to enjoy lower prices and also for us to enjoy variety or wider choice of goods and services. What is it the government is doing to ensure that there are no imperfect markets? Because we know them, they are actually exploiting us in terms of higher prices and lower quality supply. Government can deal with imperfect competition by the following: formulating and implementing competition policy to increase the level of competition. You remember competition policy? You remember that one, Leonard, in the perfect market, we did the competition policy where we talk of competition commission, where we talk of competition tribunal, and also competition appeal court. Those competition policies, they are there by government in implementing them to ensure that there is an increased level of competition. And also remember, we also talked about the aims of the competition policy. Somewhere we talk of efficiency as an aim or as an objective of competition policy, that the aim is to achieve efficiency. Efficiency means there is no waste of resources, and that will actually lead to what? Will actually lead to a greater supply. Then we'll enjoy lower price and variety of choice as consumers. Then the other one, imposing price control and using legislation to decrease the price of products. That is a government intervention in dealing with imperfect markets. Then the last one, granting of license to other firms in case of monopoly. If remember, the license and patent rights was the barrier of entry in imperfect market like monopoly, then the government intervention is to grant licensing to other firms like monopolies so that we can have variety of choice. Maybe to have a company like Eskom so that commission can be there, price can be low. I'm just making an example of that. Then let's go on. We have this one. Number 3, minimum wage. Very important, learners. We have positive and negative effect of this intervention by government in terms of implementation of the minimum wage. We need to be careful of that question. It might come as it is, draw and explain, or you actually evaluate the effect of introduction of implementation of this minimum wage, how positive it is, how negative it is. Very important. 8 mark can come without a graph. Just you evaluating the positive effect and negative effect of it when it is implemented. Very important. So this is an intervention by government to set the minimum wage. Very important first to acknowledge the concept, what is minimum wage. That concept is very important. Right, let's look at the minimum wage. It says a minimum wage is the lowest remuneration that employers may legally pay to workers. When you look at our graph there, the wage rate in a market, look at this one. Demand and supply has established a market wage. Maybe let's say it was the market wage in this case was 3,000. But we'll need to check what is the minimum wage now in terms of government introduction of it. Then, now it says equivalently, it is a price floor below which workers may not sell their labor. We'll come to the effects. Ne? A minimum wage decreases the demand for labor and increases the supply. Look at what is happening here. Minimum wage, meaning the maybe now the minimum wage is 3,500. I want us to go through this bullet 3. Okay, Lenas, this is a very serious presentation slide. We need to be very conscious and very attentively listening into this one. Can please ensure that where you are connected, the slide is very visible enough for you to see so that you can understand the movements of what I'm going to explain in this graph. Right, let's go on, learners. I want us to pay attention here on bullet 3. It says a minimum wage decrease demand for what? Labor. And increase the supply of labor. Remember here, learners, we are not talking demand for goods and services. We are talking demand for labor and supply for labor. But the law still applies. The law of demand and supply. Right? It cuts across actually. Now, the wage rate that was set according to the demand and supply, it was 3,000. Now, government intervention to say, let workers be paid 3,500, no longer 3,000 as the market wage. In an actual fact, the wage rate has increased from 3,000 to 3,500. So what happens now? People will want to offer more of their labor. Let's say this one is quantity 2, this one is quantity 1. Meaning people will want to offer what? More of their labor. Because of what? There is more wage rate that is paid in the market. Hence we say that minimum wage will increase will decrease the demand, but increase the supply. People want to supply more of their labor. Hence, you will see due to the minimum wage that was introduced, the quantity supplied of labor will increase from Q to Q2. But employers might not want to pay 3,500 because they are used to pay 3,000. Then the quantity demanded for labor will decrease from, this one is quantity supplied, it's fine. Let's do this, learners, so that we make it easy for us to understand here. Because in my graph, it's other way around. It's fine. Look at what is happening now. When income wage rate has increased from 3,000 to 3.5, what happens? We want to supply. We want to supply. We want to work. We are encouraged to work. Hence, you will see what will happen. There will be an increase in the supply of labor from Q to Q1. But the employer might not want, remember, if the employer had 10 employees, paying the 10 employees 3,000 a month, meaning in a month, all employees are paid how much? 30,000. We are talking employee. Then employer will say, I don't remember, it's an intervention by the government that no worker should be paid anything less than minimum wage. The employers will say, okay, it's fine. I adhere to the intervention by government to pay 3,500, but I'm used to 3,000. I don't have a problem to pay 3.5. But what will happen? The budget of the employer is 3,000. It means the employer will reduce some of the laborers from 10 to a lower number so that he will play around the very same budget of paying all his or her workers 30,000. Him doing that by decreasing the number of laborers, it actually leads to what? Unemployment. But the government intervention was to encourage people by encouraging people to earn more income in order to improve their standard of living, in order to make sure that they are able to afford to buy more of goods and services, and also encouraging them to seek for employment so that the unemployment rate can decrease. That was the initial intervention by the government to increase the minimum wage from the market wage of 3,000 to 3.5. That is positive effect, that people will be encouraged to work, people will be earning more income, people will be able to afford more goods and services that will eventually improve their standard of living. That is a positive effect of the intervention by government. But now, government is not the one that is employing people, it's the employer. Employer will say, okay, government is fine, we'll pay 3.5. But the budget is 30,000, we are used to that. Then I will reduce the number of employees, maybe from 10 to 8 numbers to 3.5, so that I can play around plus or minus the budget of 3,000. Then what happens? Hence, we say the demand for labor will now decrease from Q to Q2, leading to what? Unemployment. That is what is actually negative about the implementation of the minimum wage by government, which will lead to unemployment. The demand for labor will decrease. Right, let's go on. The graph on your right shows the effect setting minimum price by the government. If the wage are set at a price higher than the market wage, which is the minimum wage, look at what will happen. Demand will be exceeded by the supply. There will be more supply of labor, but lesser demand of labor, creating a situation where many people are willing to supply, which is a positive thing. Because when there is a more supply of labor, it means people are willing to work. But here is a challenge, which becomes a negative now. But businesses are not willing to hire due to the fact that labor will be expensive. They are used to pay 3,000. They are now paying 3.5. The labor becomes expensive. What they will do now? They will demand lesser of labor. Hence, it is shifting from Q to Q2. This leads to higher unemployment rate due to the excess supply of labor. More labor is supplied, but there is a less labor that is demanded. Very important to know positiveness of introduction of minimum wage and the negativeness of it. 8 marks can come without graph in terms of evaluating that. Let's go on, learners. Number 4. Number 3. Okay, number 4. Minimum price. Very important as well. Very important. You also have to acknowledge that there is a positive and negative of introduction of this, as well as introduction of this one as well, of the minimum price that we might experience, positive and negative effect of that minimum price. Very important. 8 mark can come without a graph to evaluate the effect. Right, let's look at what is happening. Very important concept. It can be asked that concept in a data response. It can be asked that concept in section A. We need to know that concept. What is the minimum price? Right. Remember, the price is determined by the market forces of demand and supply, which is this price. Maybe let's say the price here is price 10 rand. And when you look at this one, learners, minimum price, minimum wage, look at the graph. They are likely to be the same. Minimum price, minimum wage, look at minimum price. They are likely to be the same graphs. But we are talking different concepts, because at the minimum wage, the wage rate, market wage increased. Minimum price, we had the market price, and the price also increased. Meaning that in a description form, we say a minimum price is a price that is set above. Because when you look at this one is above. It's above what? The initial market price. So there's similarity between, that's why I started with minimum wage and go to minimum price, because the graphs are actually looking the same, but we are talking different concepts. Then it is known as the minimum price or a price floor when the government set a minimum legal limit of the price of the particular good or a service. Meaning that the concept, we say that what is the minimum price? It's a price that is set above the market price. Here is the minimum price. It is set above the market price. It's up there. The market price is below it. Very important, learners. For this to have an effect on the demand, on the market, the price floor must be placed above the natural price. This price, minimum price, we also call it what? A price floor. Very important concept that examiner might not say minimum price, but might say what? A price floor or a price floor. Let's be very careful of that. Then let's go to the interpretation as well to see what is happening. Remember, in the minimum wage, we said supply of labor will increase, demand for labor will decrease. Now, what is an intention in terms of the positive effect? What is an intention of the government to intervene to set minimum price? We look at the positive. Is to benefit who? The consumers. More especially which consumers? The poor. I see the hand there. Can also. Right, guys, can you see the slide? I say I've seen Route 80, the hand was up there. I've seen the hand is up there. Was it in relation to the slide or a clarity? Raweti, Leonard, by the show of hands or a thumb, please, can you just indicate that the slide, are you still able to see the slide so that we can proceed with the presentation? Hatelopili, are you saying that it goes? We are fine. Can I see the thumb there to say that it goes? We are fine, or are we still fine? Are we fine? All right. Let's go on with learners. We are fine. I don't want to leave other learners behind, please. Right. We're busy with the positive. What was the intention of the government in introducing this minimum price? It was to benefit the poor, for them to actually able to earn, to able to afford to buy necessity goods. Very important. That is a positive effect. It to ensure that that didn't go see. Where are we? The price is actually increased. Let's fix that one. Let's fix that one, learners. That didn't go see. We cannot say the poor. Right? Let's fix that one. We cannot actually saying the benefit was to the poor. The benefit was actually for the producers. The benefit was actually for the producers to earn comfortable profits. Why we say for the producers? Because it was for the producers, because the reason was that the price has increased. Maybe it was charged 10 rand, now it's charged 15 rand. It means the price becomes higher. What happens now? The demand of goods and services due to the price that has increased, it will shift from, it will actually decrease from Q to Q2. That shows a decrease. But the supply due to the price that is high will increase from Q to Q1, which shows a what? An increase there. So the aim of the government to intervene by setting the minimum price is to ensure producers, they are encouraged to produce more of essential goods, meaning there is a more encouragement of production to producers so that they can able to earn more profit or comfortable profits, and also allowing them to be profitable and stay in the market to produce more of these necessity goods. That is an aim of government positive intervention by introducing minimum price to ensure that producers are making comfortable profit, because they are no longer going to charge 10 rand, they are going to charge 15 rand. It means they are going to make more profits due to the price and supply more because they are encouraged by price increase that was set by the government. But the challenge, which is the negative effect, what is the challenge? The challenge will be the demand. The demand for goods and services will decrease from Q2 to Q2, meaning people are going to demand less. Why? Because price has increased. So when people decide not to buy at the price of 15 rand, they are actually decreasing their demand. And what is the negative effect of that? It's a surplus. Businesses will be left with many goods that are not sold to consumers. Hence, we talk of the word surplus. So what will happen to the surplus now? The very same government has to buy this surplus and do what with the surplus? And dump it. We're talking another concept now. Dumping. Due to that, the consumers, they were not willing to buy that particular product with 15 rand. They were comfortable with 10 rand. But government intervention, positively so, was to support the producers, to encourage them to produce more, to encourage them to stay operating. But the challenge will be consumers. Will they buy at 15 rand? No. Hence the demand will decrease from Q2 to Q2. Then leading to what? Goods being unsold, which will leave us with a surplus. Then the government has to buy those goods and dump it. What is dumping? Selling goods locally or abroad at a price that is below their production costs. That's why the year is an effect. This normally leads to a surplus. The quantity supplied will be greater than the quantity demanded. We are demanding less, but there is more that is supply. Meaning we have then excess supply. Then what will happen? The price floor are set by the government for a certain commodity and service that is believed that they are being what? Sold an unfair market with too low price, and thus their producers deserve some assistance. Government is assisting producers when they set the minimum price, which is the price above the market price. And look at that. This is done to enable producers to make comfortable profit and encourage them to supply important essential goods. That is what positive government wanted to achieve as their intervention. Very important matters. Positive and negative of minimum wage, positive and negative of minimum price. Effect. We look at what the government wanted to achieve by that intervention, but what that intervention brings to the market, which is negative. Much important. Then we are at number 5, state intervention of the government. Maximum price. You see what is happening now. Let's go back a little bit. Minimum price. Just 2 seconds to observe the graph. And let's move. Tap. Maximum price. When you look at the previous graph, the similarity is that something was above somewhere, somehow. Now something is below somewhere, somehow. So we also need to acknowledge there are positive effect and negative effect. And also concept of that. And everything that I've said, that you might be having the 8-mark question of evaluating this kind of a intervention by government of the maximum price without the graphs. But you need to also know with the graph. Now, let's look at the concept. The previous one we said is the minimum price set above. This one will be maximum price set below, because this was a price that was determined by the market forces of demand and supply. Now the price now is set below the market price. What was the intention of government setting price below the market price? And what will be the impact of that if the price are below the market price? Very important, learners. Remember here, I think we also say quantity 2, Q and QR, so that our interpretation can make sense. Right. Let's look at what is happening now. It is known as a maximum price or a price ceiling. Very important. This one to say somewhere we say it's a price ceiling. Very important. Remember that one we said is a price floor. This one is also what? A price ceiling. Examiners can have the authority not to say maximum price or price ceiling, minimum price or a price floor. Let's be familiar with the concept. Set a maximum price legally to limit the price of a particular good or a service. For this to have an effect on the market, the price ceiling must be placed below the natural. It must be placed below the natural. It means it must be placed here, which is the below the natural. Where was the natural? The natural was up there, which is the market price. Now the government is placing it below. Hence we say the maximum price is the price that is set below the market price. Now let's look at here before we go to bullet 3 and check what is happening. Maybe the price was actually 15 rand. Now the price is 10 rand. Now, we first look at the positive effect. The intervention by government was to achieve what? The price was 15 rand, there's 10. It means now we are talking us. The government wanted to assist us as consumers, more especially the poor, to able to afford to buy more of necessity goods at a lower price, because now the price has been decreased from 15 to 10 rand. It was actually trying to assist us in buying goods at a lower price. In order, when we are able to buy at the lower price, we're able to improve our standard of living as well, because we are now able to buy more because the price has been lowered by the government. Now we are able to buy more. More means we can improve our standard of living. That is good by government. But look at what is happening here. When the price has decreased from the market price to the maximum price, which is price that is set below, what happens? Look at what is happening. The quantity demanded is increasing. Will demand more, which shift from Q to Q2. But suppliers will supply less because they see the price is low. They are not going to make more profit. They will withdraw their supply or their production. They will supply less. Supplying less becomes a what? A negative effect. And supplying less leads to what? Shortage, because now the demand is more than the supply. Then we'll experience a shortage. And shortage is negative effect. Because we want to buy at 10 rand and we are mainly willing to buy. But now producers are supplying less due to lesser price that is charged on the price of the product. Then we experience the shortage. Then what happens now in terms of the shortage? That's where now we experience this one. Black markets, now they exist. You see the existence of black markets. Where they do what in the black market? Where they sell goods that are legal at a higher price. That is becomes what? Negative. But the intervention by government was to assist us as the consumers in order to buy. But due to that, we experience a shortage because the demand is increasing. Then supply is not actually coming on board. Then someone will say, I see people are demanding. Let me come and bring them something that is illegal at the price that is also high. Then let's look at it. This is normally to a shortage. The quantity demanded will be bigger than the quantity supply. If the government decides that the market clearance price of goods and services is too high, they need to reduce it. Meaning what? A price ceiling will be imposed, which is the price what? Maximum price. Price below the market price. Price must go down. The reason for this such intervention could be a monopoly which charges unreasonable higher price, or the goods and services essentially, or it is a merit good like education and healthcare and so forth. That is the reason why the government might say, let the price be set below the market price. But what is negative? We experience what? A shortage, which is not good. Right? Let's go on, learners. Number 5, state intervention, taxes. I think we have dealt with this one. It's just a repeat somehow, but we have dealt with this one. That a negative extra, when we are doing the positive and negative externality graph, we have dealt this one. We say that government will tax businesses that are producing goods and services that causes negative externality. The reason to do what? To recover external cost. Because that money, when it goes to the government revenue, when there is something that is cost externally, the government is able to supply. This tax will increase the price and will result in a decrease in production. Meaning there will be less that can be produced on goods that causes what? Negative externality. And this would reduce negative externality such as what? Pollution. Remember the airport. If the government is saying it's no problem for you to build or construct an airport, but if there is such pollution that comes, excessive pollution that comes from that production, I'm going to charge you more tax in order to recover what? External cost. So the graph on your right shows what? Negative externality. The price charged at the market is equals to point E, which is P and what? Which is the equilibrium before the shift. If external cost could be quantified and then added as E1, efficient equilibrium will become a new equilibrium, which is P1 from the equilibrium E1. It's actually doing what? It is decreasing the supply and increasing the price. Why? We want to discourage production of demerit, negative externality goods, because they are causing external costs. Then let's move on. P1 becomes a new price and quantity sold reduced to Q1. As a result of that, negative externality, quantity produced become less, but the price become higher, which is the law of supply and the law of supply in relation to the price. Then note, very important, that E represent private cost while E1 represent private cost plus social cost. So the reason for this government, in order to charge tax, is to discourage, remember I said to discourage what? Production of demerit goods. Then hence you see supply shifting from S to S1, which is shifting from what? From the right to the left. Solution will be charging an excessive duty, which is sin tax, on goods that have external cost, which will be what? Reducing consumption. Example, sin tax charged on cigarette because cigarette is harmful for human being. Consumption is also affecting other people that are not actually smoking. So government intervention in levying tax is to discourage consumption and production of goods that are causing negative externality. Then we come to the number 5, which is subsidy. Remember, we have also dealt with this one to say that subsidy will actually encourage production of merit goods, or goods that have what? That have benefit to the society. Remember the example that we did there, building of an airport construction. The government will give those producers that are producing airports more subsidy to lower their cost of production in order for them to produce more of airport, because that airport will actually have what? A social benefit to the society in terms of their employment. People that are residing nearby the airport will get employment. And I see their hands there. Lehai and Rutwaiti. Rutwaiti and Lehai. I've seen there was a hand there from both schools. Are you able to see the presentation. Remember, learners, we did this graph when we were differentiating as per examination guideline, when we were differentiating between positive and negative. But here I was just wanted to explain why the government has to intervene to subsidize and why the government has to intervene to impose tax on production of things that are causing negative externality, and also levying tax on production of goods that are causing negative externality. So in short, it simply means the tax is discouraging consumption and production of negative externality. But the subsidy is doing what? It's actually encouraging. Why encouraging? There is a benefit. But the tax is discouraging because tax has the negative externality has a what? A cost. And when you are taxed, it means you are paying what? The price of the product plus the tax. It means you will be encouraged to buy that product. Hence, the tax is imposed to reduce the negative externality. But here, the subsidy is given to producers to produce more of such goods. In which goods that we talked about? We talk of education, so that there will be more demand for education. Hence, you see the demand increasing from D to D1. People should demand education. People should demand healthcare services as they are beneficiary to them. But when you look at this one, the tax, government is levying tax to discourage the consumption of such goods by imposing higher excise duty or sin tax on cigarette, because cigarette is harmful for human being consumption. So let's take it in that way, in that form. Let's look at it here. The reason for that, it says subsidy increase supply. Government is giving subsidy to increase to encourage what? Producers to produce more. There must be more production of education, more production of healthcare services, so that the demand can be more. Producers' subsidy are often given to suppliers of agricultural products such as milk, wheat, and maize. Because of what? These are the commodities that we are using on a daily basis. Then subsidy is actually lowering what? Remember, when the government is giving producers of such goods like milk, wheat, and maize, they are actually trying to lower their cost of producing those products so that the prices can be lower to benefit who? Consumers. Because we are actually using those goods on a daily basis. Then the graph shows positive externality. Price is charged at point E, which is equilibrium price, but due to the government intervention by giving subsidy, we want to see people demanding more. This represents private benefit, and if the external benefit could quantify it and then add it, E1 will be existing now because there was a shift of D to D1. Then becomes a new price and quantity sold increase from Q to Q1. Look at that. The quantity sold move from Q to Q1. Then what will happen? The line DD represent the private benefit. Here, now people are benefiting. External represent the direct cost for providing a good and a service. At point E, the market equilibrium. Right, so be very careful. We have dealt with that one when we're differentiating, but subsidy and tax is part of government intervention. But you need to know how to draw and explain positive and also how to draw a negative externality graph. Stand alone as per examination guideline. Can we just go back and look at it? Remember, as in when we are studying, we need to observe examination guideline. Look at it. Positive and negative externality there. Right. Look at it here. Negative and positive externality. It says with the aid of well-labeled graphs. Here you need to know that. But look at in the interventions. There is tax, there is subsidy. On the same graphs, seeing that what is happening to tax, what is happening to subsidy. So here they are stand alone for you to explain. But here we need intervention. What is it that the government is doing in the intervention to ensure that there is less things that are causing negative externality? There is more things that are there that causing positive externality. I see there is a hand there from PK. I see there is a hand there. Do you want to ask a question? I see there was a hand there. Right, guys? I see there was a hand there. We only left with 2 minutes to finish, and we are almost there. Right? We are done with the subsidy, it's fine. Then the next one, remember we had an equal imperfect distribution of income and wealth as the cause. Now government is intervening to redistribute wealth. You remember we had imperfect as a cause or a reason. Now government is intervening to correct that imbalance of income and wealth. Look at what the government is doing. Government implement progressive tax income system and spending power to redistribute income and wealth. Meaning that the government is doing that in order to balance the gap between the rich and the poor. This one, when you can go back to public sector objectives under economic equity, there is similarity in terms of redistribution method on what is it that government wants to do in order to achieve economic equity, redistribution. These are the methods. Traditional method, e.g., leveling of various tax, levy of various tax, and provisioning of free services, services in kind, cash benefit to the poor. We are trying to do what? We have the balance. Now the government is intervening to balance the gap between the rich and the poor, which is economic equity. Implementing readdress method, using laws to enforce redistribution, including triple BEE. Remember now we have what? We don't have BEE, we have what? Triple BEE, which is broad-based black economic empowerment. That is one of the measures that the government is intervening to make sure that distribution of income now and wealth, it becomes equal. Remember, it was inequality, it was the cause. Affirmative action, empowerment, land restitution. Remember here, when the land is reinstitution, when there is a land reinstitution, it is when the land is given back to the previous owner due to apartheid era. Then we have the land redistribution, meaning in this one, the land here is given to the person because there was a what? There must be a purpose for the use of the land. Maybe you want to be a farmer, then the land will be redistributed to you. Then we have the property subsidy. Examples, we talk of the RDP houses that the government was redistributing to the poor in order to close the gap between the rich and the poor. Right? Let's go on to number 7, which is government involvement. Public goods. Since public goods and services are non-excludable and non-reviewable, the market is not willing to supply them. As a result, government can do so or outsource the production, therefore, and finance this by rising taxes. That is how the government is intervening. Reason being, you remember the pure public goods in terms of non-excludable and non-reviewable, it was the problem because they are actually undersupplied, but there is a what? There is a demand for them. So government will try to outsource in terms of supplying them as a result, or it can also increase tax in terms of financing this pure public goods and services that is needed by the citizens. That was all about the state intervention as a consequence of the market failure. Sorry, learners, the presentation was too long. I did not cater CBA as the last topic of our market failure, which is cost-benefit analysis. But I'm sure you will study that topic. It's not that difficult. It's just 2 or 3 concepts there for it to understand the importance of CBA and also the rationale behind it, and also CBA in practice. How do we say that we should go on with the project or not? Thank you very much. Let us see you next time. Good luck for your upcoming examinations.